This is the In the Rabbit Hole episode archive project. What you're about to watch and listen to is a past episode from In the Rabbit Hole Urban Survival Podcast. You can learn more by visiting intherabbithole.com. Be sure to like this video and subscribe to our YouTube channel now.
And now, two guys who survived running with scissors, Aaron and Jonathan.
Howdy, and welcome to episode 64 of In the Rabbit Hole's Urban Survival Podcast. In this episode, we put on French-made outfits and help you with your preparedness spring cleaning. We're your hosts, Aaron
and Jonathan.
And you are in the rabbit hole, safe and sound. Today's show is sponsored by Cat's Coffee. If you're looking for truly exceptional coffee to help you survive the morning or the next zombie apocalypse, you need to be drinking Cat's. They specialize in the finest coffee from sources that prioritize environmental responsibility and are fair trade certified. Their goal is to achieve perfection in every cup. Check them out at Catz, K-A-T-Z as in zebra, coffee.com, or click on their bright green banner on the site and make sure you're dealing with an official sponsor of the show. Again, that's Catz, K-A-T-Z as in zebra, coffee.com. Jonathan, you dumped out your bag the other day. And by bag, I mean your bug out bag. I don't want there to be any confusion about what you dumped out. I mean, we don't want it to be your purse or something.
No, yeah. It was my bug out bag, and I'm ashamed to admit this. I'm really ashamed to admit this. There were things in the bottom of that bag. Now, bear in mind, this is the bug out bag that I built way back when. I mean, this bag has just been growing, not anything else. And I know I've been breaking all the rules I haven't gone through. But when I dumped it out, there were two issues. One is there are things in it that I don't remember buying. And I'm actually serious. Like, I don't know how they got in there. I don't know if different tools were getting together and they created new tools.
That's freaky.
Yeah, weird.
That's like a whole weird porn site all by itself. I didn't even know what to do.
It's weird
with
bug
that.
out bag porn. And then the second problem was there are things in there that I wasn't sure what they were.
That's even worse.
Yeah, and even now I'm not sure. Like, I've actually looked. They're not in packaging. I'm looking at it. I'm trying to figure out what it is. I still don't know. So what I've decided is those kinds of things probably shouldn't be in my bag.
Yeah, I would have to agree with you on that. But now I'm really curious what the hell those things are.
I'll send you a picture. I'm not ready to post it online yet.
Maybe what it is at some point your wife decided your bag was kind of that kitchen drawer that everybody has in their homes where they just stick weird crap. They don't know what else to do.
Actually, that came to mind, and I haven't had the conversation with her yet about it, but I'm probably going to, because some of these things really do look like items that I just...
Honey, why is there a juicer in my bag?
Yeah, it's kind of like that. Well, there was nowhere else to put it.
Oh.
I mean, that kind of thing. Well, at the end of the world, I wanted a juicer with us. I mean...
So you could make your own Soylent Green.
Exactly, Which people juice is always the best kind of juice.
Which brings us to the topic of the show today, why we're babbling about what's in Jonathan's bag, which seems like a whole gag reel we could do. But the topic of today's show is spring cleaning for preppers. And as Jonathan was just talking about, he cleaned out his bag. And I actually did the same thing with my EDC bag recently because I'm still a little terrified bug out bag. Which
you should be.
Yeah, I mean, I have the same problem you did. I mean, it's a perfectly good bag if the world blew up tomorrow and there was blood in the streets and I was going to war. Don't imagine that's going to happen. I think weirder things have happened, but I don't think that's going to happen. So I actually do need to strip that bag back down. But I went through and cleared out my EDC bag, and there was all kinds of... I try to do it every once in a while just to get rid of stuff that I'm like, oh, I have a skill that replaces that piece of gear now.
Well, Aaron, just remember, the ATF frowns upon throwing away rocket launchers, well, at least loaded rocket launchers, in your trash can.
Yeah.
So use your recycling bin.
All right. I will recycle those. I won't be. I'll be green. But yeah, I mean, I went through a lot of that, and I found a lot of random just. Why do I have this in my bag, or why do I have 4 of these in my bag, and started taking stuff out. And so, as part of a bigger concept of everybody's familiar with the concept of spring cleaning, that time when the weather gets nice again and we can open our windows and kind of clean out the house and really give the house like a good scrubbing, since we've been kind of cooped up for the majority of winter, unless you're or unless you're
in Texas,
where it just never got cold this year.
Yeah.
I think I wore a jacket like twice this year.
Yeah, that's probably true.
It was kind of ridiculous. More to the point of, if we're going to do a survival spring cleaning, probably one of the best places to start with is your bag. And if you don't even have a bag yet to clean, we do have an episode for just on bags, and we'll link to it in the show notes today. But where do you start with bags, and why would you start? And I think that was kind of where we were leading in with Jonathan dumping out his bag and finding things he didn't even know what they were. Apparently his survival juicer was in there, and my EDC bag, which I don't even remember what I took out. I think I took out a bunch of glow sticks.
Yeah. I had a bunch of glow sticks in there too. But that's a good point. One of the reasons I dumped it first, and I'm sure you did the same thing, was to figure out what was in it.
Yeah, exactly.
And you've got to get an inventory of what you have.
Yeah.
And that's got to be the very first thing you do. I mean, it's because otherwise you really will end up with a bag full of stuff. And I'm not even kidding when I told, the beginning story was a real story. Aaron had brought up the fact that we were doing this show and all that. And I just had to tell him. And he was like, oh, you've got to tell everybody that one.
Yeah.
Because there really are things in it that just, it's like they shouldn't be in there. I don't know why they're in there. And so I started with the inventory thing too. I've got everything laid out, and now I'm in the process of just writing it all down as a list.
And I will be more, I think I actually do have a bug out bag spreadsheet somewhere that I made years and years ago. If I can find it, I'll probably go back through it, or I may just start from scratch myself. And to start off with bags, since that's kind of where we began, which is to, and I think your way of doing it was probably the best way, and I did it pretty much the same way. I dumped out my EDC bag on a counter, and then just start going through stuff. I didn't write anything down because it's an EDC bag. It's smaller. I'm not trying to live out of the thing for any real extended period of time, more than a day at the most. And so just going through, and one of the most important things to do, and this is important no matter whether we're talking about bags or we're talking about anything, is to first ask, is this still necessary? And this is a concept that you and I both talked about before, Jonathan, which is to look at something and ask, is this necessary, or have I acquired some skill that now renders this gear unnecessary? And while
do I know what this is?
Yeah,
I mean, and I say that in jest, and I do know what everything in my bag is, but some of it I really don't know how I would end up using it. And it's not just what it is, but how would you use it? If you don't know how you would use it, there's a good chance it probably shouldn't be in your bug out bag.
And I'll tell a story, and I know you have one too, the Ouija bars.
Yeah.
Those little mini crowbars. I actually, and I'm sure somebody, and hopefully, and if you have a good idea of what this is useful for, please put it in the show, comment on the show today and tell us. Because I looked at mine, I had one in my my EDC bag, and I genuinely have no idea what, I'm like, it doesn't seem large enough to actually get enough leverage to break anything open.
Yep. So I'll tell you, I've used it. Mine is no longer in my EDC or my bug out bag. Mm-hmm. It's now in my toolkit, and I have used it to open paint cans. I have used it to basically for silly things like to create a spacer while I'm inserting something else in something. Like I had to fix a hinge, and I use that as a spacer. It's strong. Overall, though, it's not particularly useful. At least not to me. Like Aaron said, put in the show notes if you got ways to use it. Let us know.
Besides opening cans of paint, because actually that is the only thing I've used
Yeah.
mine for too. I'm starting a whole new box of random survival crap that I just don't need anymore or something, and maybe I'll put it on. Oh, and actually a perfect time to announce that Redbeard and Jeep have been doing an amazing job with the forum as people have started to really pour in, and we've really started to build a community there. And one of the new things we've done is we've created a swap meet section. It's really neat. Members can go in, and it's a completely at-will thing. You use at your own discretion. There's rules on there for good behavior and bad behavior and all that kind of stuff. So go check it out. And I may start loading a bunch of this stuff that I'm just like, I don't need this on there myself. And the Ouija bar was one of them. And I'm trying to think of what were some of the other things that were in my EDC bag that I took out. There was a CPR face shield I took out because I just, not that I'm not going to do CPR, but it was more of, I had a couple of them in there, and that was unnecessary. I don't see that I'm going to be giving CPR to more than one person in a particular instance. And it was also just about, the bag is heavy, and it was unnecessary for everyday use. I mean, it was definitely, I can put that in medical supply somewhere else, and that was something I wouldn't necessarily throw away. But since, as Ron and I were talking about, the way CPR has changed, and you're not really going to be giving mouth to mouth that much, I was like, okay, well, this can come out. And glow sticks were another one. I was just kind of like, well, how many glow sticks does a person really need in their EDC bag? So I think I had 6 in there, and I left all but 1.
I had 6, and I now have 2.
I'm trying to think of what else I took out of there. I don't even remember anymore. But it was just a lot of just random crap. I don't need this,
Mm-hmm.
And that, in part of it is, and it goes back to the old thing about having a handgun. If you pick a gun that is too heavy and uncomfortable for you to carry every day, you're probably at some point going to end up not carrying it anymore. And I think the same is true with an EDC bag. And a bug-out bag that's too heavy is going to become a liability.
Mm-hmm.
So to move on past bags and stuff, we can apply those same things to our homes. This is a perfect time to take an inventory, a very general inventory of your home. Make a list of what are all of the bags that you have, where are they, and then you can start breaking it down and making a project. And it's not something you have to do all in one week. You can, but definitely put it on your schedule of things to do so that it actually gets done. Because a lot of the bags and a lot of the items, some of that stuff is perishable. So it is, you really do need to go through it. And I'll share an example in just a few minutes. But to inspect the bags, like Jonathan and I were just take them, dump them all out, really look at it and really think about what you've got in there. And the same thing with any kind of kits you've got and any kind of tools you.
Right. Hey, when you dump those bags and you put everything back in, when you put it back in, make sure little things. Are the seams busting? When this bag's loaded up, does it hold up well? Those are things that this would be a great time to check those things, because you don't want to worry about lifting up a bag to get out of your house and just having the bottom fall out.
Yeah, especially if you've bought. Now, I know there are some of those prepackaged kits that are pretty good, but some of those prepackaged kits, the bag they come in are complete crap. And it's like, that is an excellent point that you brought up. I mean, what better time to really look and make sure that every piece of your gear is in perfect working order. And the mundane things that maybe we overlook as preppers and survivalists and think of as they really are tools of survival in a more general and a more likely sense are smoke alarms and fire extinguishers. Fire extinguishers do actually expire.
Yeah. You need to either get it refilled, checked. There's things you need to do to maintain a fire extinguisher.
And I don't think most people know that. And so whether that's getting it refilled or some of them, smaller ones, I don't even know if they can be refilled. So replace it, check it. There's checking batteries and smoke alarms. Even if the batteries are still good, swap them out. Batteries are just not that expensive. Make sure everything is in good working order. Because again, those are the things that are more likely to jump up and bite you in life than, let's say, blood in the streets. So what else can we talk about? We can also talk about taking inventory of your food stores, taking a step back and see how far along you've gotten with your food stores. And when I say food, I'm including water in that conversation too. And as far as If you've had water that's been stored for a long time, it might be a good time to take a look, make sure nothing's leaked, or that the water, which I actually had this issue happen where one of the water containers got a leak in it and leaked over some of my stuff. Make sure that nothing weird is growing in the water, that it's all in good shape. And the same thing with your food, to go back to that, making sure that you're on track for whatever length of time you've decided will make you comfortable and prepared in your life. So whether that's 3 days, 3 weeks, 3 months, 3 years, take a look at how long it's taking you to get there, how far along you are, and whether or not your original assumptions about those timelines are correct. And maybe those need to be adjusted.
That's hugely important. I mean, making sure that you've got everything in line. And like you said, the timelines, now's the time to reevaluate what those timelines might look like too. Is it you've now got a new child maybe, or you've got a new pet, or something's occurred in your life. Maybe you just have more space, you moved, and so you can store more. Anything, now's the time to reevaluate those things. And the other thing you want to consider, once you've taken all that into account, you've now taken into account food and water and what your needs are there. You got power. You may have put in a generator, or you may have bought a portable generator. Those things, whether they're the house generators or the portable ones, they require maintenance. Go maintain it. Now's a great time to do that. The weather in most of the country is pretty reasonable. So even if you had to turn in your generator, you're not worried about air conditioning, you're not worried about certain things. Or if you had to have somebody maintain it, you're not worried about those things as much. So now's a great time to do that type of generator maintenance.
And that's also stuff that more likely than not, the companies that service that kind of stuff are not going to be jammed up.
Right. Yeah, now's not the emergency time. Right before hurricane season or as you enter winter, those guys get phone calls left and right. They're scheduled for weeks in advance. Right now, those guys aren't as busy. I'm sure, we might get an email or two. Oh, we're busy all the time.
Yeah.
But it's less busy now than it would be later.
Here in our area, hurricane season's coming up pretty soon. So, that's not the beginning of hurricane season, or a month into hurricane season is not when you want to try to have your stuff serviced. You might as well get it taken care of now.
Right. The other thing is, when you're talking about gear and tools and things you need, Aaron talked about fire extinguishers and smoke detectors and all that. But we talk a lot on the show about guns and knives. So when it comes to knives, you do need to care for those things. Now's a good time to make sure that you've, go through that process, do the ritual sharpening, get it nice and razor sharp, really check it and make sure that there's no rust spots, clean it. It's just a really good time to take care of those tools. Guns, I personally recommend cleaning them regularly, taking care of them regularly, but now maybe is a good time to take that extra step and check the springs. Maybe take it to a gunsmith and have it checked out. I'm not saying you have to do that every year. I'm not saying you have to do that super regularly, but check them out, make sure everything feels right. Go down to the range and make sure there are no extra failures to fire, or everything's working.
And I think that's a very important point. Take care of your tools. And when it comes time, your tools will take care of you. Mm-hmm. And I think that's kind of the bigger idea there. And the same thing with knives and guns and power tools, anything you're using. It's a perfect time to inspect everything that you've got, make sure that it's in good working order.
Your point's great. This doesn't have to be specific to survival. As you're doing spring cleaning, you can go through all the tools you use on a regular basis.
The point I was going to make about that is that a lot of the tools that you have, and this is one of the discussions that's been coming up on the forum and is going to turn into a future episode about what do you do after a disaster as far as cleanup goes. And a lot of the tools that you own will become part of that process. For instance, if we use hurricane so often because it's something so relevant to our lives, but making sure that your chainsaw is in good working order. That's another thing that you would want to take in and get serviced, or if you have the skills yourself, to service them yourself. Because after a hurricane, there's going to be branches and limbs and stuff everywhere, and that's going to be one of the tools you're going to want to use to clean up, unless you just have a super fondness for axes, and that's how you want to get your exercise or cure your boredom after a hurricane. But that's the time to really look at all of those things and think about how some of those things that don't seem like preparedness items could very easily be preparedness items. And again, whether we're talking about very normal circumstances or extraordinary circumstances.
Yeah.
This is also the time you want to take to, just like we were talking about, smoke detectors and checking batteries. You want to check the batteries in your flashlights. Batteries do have a tendency, we've all seen it, where you open up a flashlight or an electronic that you haven't used in a very long time, and battery's corroded. Sometimes that corrosion even ruins whatever the device is. So it's time to take that stuff out, make sure the flashlights work. It may even be time to go ahead and change out the batteries, depending on how they were stored or how old they are. Any of the devices that you would say are important to that. To your preparedness efforts. So the most basic and easiest example, of course, is flashlights. So go through, check them all. But there's also lanterns to consider, whether we're talking about battery operated lanterns or whether we're talking about the different fuel-based lanterns. And even those, some of those can gum up just like an engine can if you let them sit for too long. You want to go through, make sure they're in good working order, make sure that, if you have kids, I know when I was a kid, I absconded with all kinds of my father's crap, whether it was tools.
And took it apart, I'm sure.
Sometimes with a hammer.
Yes.
Much to his dismay. But
for the delicate touch.
Exactly. He didn't need that Nikon put back together anyway.
Exactly.
So making sure that nobody has taken off with any of your stuff or moved it to a place where you don't know where it is, making sure that everything is in good working order, that flashlights are where they're supposed to be, that lanterns are where they're supposed to be, that fire extinguishers are where they're supposed to be. I know as a kid, I actually did play with a fire extinguisher a few times, and if something had happened and somebody had needed that fire extinguisher, it would not have been available. So, but that, rather than having a bad situation made just horrible, you can avoid that by checking all of these things now. Also, some of the older smoke alarms are just that. They're just smoke alarms. So it could also be a great time to think about, you know what, maybe I want to swap this out for a carbon monoxide alarm as well. I think they're pretty inexpensive, and now's the perfect time to do it. And there's no excuses about, well, I don't want to go here or do this or do that. It's spring cleaning time.
Right, and these aren't major. To install a carbon monoxide detector is not like a major lift on your house. So if you're capable of plugging something in, you're pretty much capable of installing a carbon monoxide detector.
Yeah, or using a screwdriver or something of that.
Some of them you can screw into walls. Other ones actually just go into outlets and charge regularly and work that way. So there are a few. So just making sure that you're prepared for the simple things in life, like a fire. You can't really control when that might happen. Being ready is a good idea. Smoke detectors are fantastic. But when you look at the battery thing, so this is something that I ran into recently. The rechargeable batteries that hold a charge, they do, and they hold it for a long time, but they don't hold it forever. There are some that hold it better than others, and I know Aaron, I can't remember the name of the brand. I've got a bunch of them also.
N-Loop, I think.
Yeah, and they hold it better than others, but I've got a few from another company that I had before I got those. It could have been 100% when you put it in that flashlight, and I promise you maybe have 10%. It'll be enough to light it up once. And that's not a good idea. So just making sure that it works, and like Aaron said, turning it actually on and off, not just replacing the batteries.
Yeah, and that goes to even what the emergency lights that we did. We had a Friday Gear Report about a long time ago, and you suggested me. I actually had one die on me, totally caught off guard by it, and luckily I happened to notice that the light on it had gone red nonstop, and so that was kind of how I figured it out. But and not that where that light was, it was in my kitchen, so it wouldn't have been disastrous or created a real issue, but it was still annoying, and it was still one of those things. It's like, okay, springtime, got to take care of that.
Yeah, and I haven't had any of those go bad, but I've had other things I've had go bad where you have little night lights or things you expect to work. It's just a good time to go check across the board any of those things that have rechargeable batteries, regular batteries. They're plugged into a wall. Make sure the outlet's still working. Believe it or not, that does happen where an outlet will short, and you don't know it's not working because, well, it's just not even charging anymore.
To go back to the bags, I forgot to mention this, but it's And you brought up the point for the show when we were talking a little bit about the show that also all of the first aid kits, you really have to go through those because you've got aspirins that diminish in their capacity and other medications and ointments and things like that. Now's the perfect time to check all the expiration dates on those.
Right. And I've started to make a habit of actually using that stuff throughout the year. So I try to replenish it as I go. But this is a great time. As I dumped my bag out, I was looking and seeing, okay, what have I and haven't I actually replenished? Because replenishing tends to be just an issue of, have I been to the drugstore? Have I not been to the drugstore?
Mm-hmm.
What have I bought and what have I not bought? But making sure that what you think you need in that bag is in there and to the stock levels that you feel comfortable.
And I ran into this with my car bag. It's a product called Emergency. It ends with a C, not a Y. I'll put it in the show notes today. And it basically replaces hydration salts, which if you've ever been in a really hot environment and, a lot of people will drink Gatorade or something to rehydrate. I don't really like Gatorade very much. And so one of the things I do is I typically use these Emergency packets and mix it with water. One of the issues you run into with water, if you're really sweating a lot, like you're in a humid environment or something that's really hot, it's actually not very good to just drink water all day long. You're actually flushing all the electrolytes out of your body, which is part of what Gatorade is actually replacing.
Right. And there's a few brands of this, so we're not necessarily recommending Emergency over one of the other ones. Although I think Emergency I've had a few of them, and Emergency tastes better than most of them.
That is the issue you run into with hydration salts. But I opened up, Jason McConnell and I were working on the farm, and I was getting, since it's starting to really warm up, I was getting kind of woozy, and I was like, oh, wait, okay, I'm getting dehydrated. So I went to my truck, and I pulled out my truck bag and started pulling out the packets of this stuff. And some of the packets, the contents, which are normally powder, had become little bricks.
Yeah.
And
seen that happen.
Yeah, and while I could have probably shaved off pieces and really swirled it around in the water or something and gotten it to dissolve again, it probably wouldn't have been as effective. It may not have even really worked out well at all.
Right.
But that goes to the point. It's, those packets, which really aren't supposed to be exposed to heat, have been living in my car bag now for, I think the last time I changed them out was actually probably about a year ago. And about half of them have become not completely useless, but pretty close to it. So, and that's kind of one of those examples. And that's the other thing, too, that in doing this, stuff gets moved around, stuff gets used. I realized the other day I have a big truck kit that I keep that's a gas can, jumper cables, things like that are not stuff that I necessarily want to have in a bag. And the other day I realized 2 weeks ago, or maybe even 3 weeks ago, I had taken that whole thing out of my truck because I think Jason McConnell and I were hauling stuff. I had gone to Home Depot to buy a whole bunch of lumber and different stuff. And it was like, all right, well, we can't get everything in here, so we'll just leave this at the farm. And I completely forgot to put it back in my truck. And then there's other things that I've taken out of those bags and forgot to put back in, or have gotten used or damaged and thrown away and not remembered to replace. And I think that's another one of the things that we run into.
So beyond just bags and kits and all that, you need to be able to check your house. So this is a great time. Weather's good. Things are going well. The sun's usually out. It's springtime. It's probably raining. So you might want to make sure your roof is in good condition. In a lot of the country, there's April showers. You've heard that many times. So make sure the roof's good. There are no leaks. Go up into your attic, take a look. If you're in an apartment, not as big a deal. Make sure all the lighting around your house. We've talked, I don't even know how many times we've mentioned this. It's been in shows from the generator show all the way through our security shows, through just general preparedness. But lighting, exterior lighting around a house is one of the best things you can do to improve the general welfare of your family and the security of your home. And check to make sure it's all working. Replace bulbs, go in, make sure there are no exposed wires. Make sure that the normal winter weather conditions that occurred haven't done any damage to that outdoor lighting. And then the thing that I recommend, because I will tell you, the first time I did it, I wasn't confused by it per se, but I'm glad that it was kind of just a random scenario of just I want to learn how to do it, and not a real life disaster, because disasters add extra adrenaline and everything. and I'll get to the point now, which is testing your shutoff valves. And when I say your shutoff valves, that's the water shutoff, your gas shutoff, knowing how they work, making sure you understand how the tool to do it works, making sure you know where those shutoffs are. This is a great time to go find them, test them, seeing that they work. I actually did hear a story where a water shutoff valve was installed in reverse. And believe it or not, when they are installed in reverse, shutting it off doesn't actually do anything. You would think that it wouldn't matter which direction the valve was facing. And if there's a plumber out there who can explain this to me, that would be great. But you would think that it wouldn't matter which direction the valve's facing. When it's off, it's off. That is not the case. So this is a great time to test that stuff. And I say that's not the case. There may have been other issues involved in this particular install as well. But basically, someone I know recently had to shut off the main water to their house, and because they had a main break, and they weren't able to do it. So test all that stuff, see how it works. These are things that now that there's nothing bad going on, great time to try it. For those of you who have been out in tornado zones and all that, you've dealt with your fair share of harsh environments this year, or more than your fair share. This is a great time now that things have settled down a little bit to go test all this stuff. And then lastly, Aaron and I were talking about this earlier too, really making sure that you take a look at your information packet, whether it be digital or physical. And you all remember we recommend having both. And going and making sure you've updated that. So if there's new information, new contact lists you need, for those of you who own Class 3 firearms, make sure all your tax stamps are copied, printed, and all that kind of stuff. But just making sure all your paperwork is in order. Now's a great time, since you're doing spring cleaning anyway and you're taking your inventory, now's a great time to do that.
And I'd like to add one more thing to go beyond the bags and go beyond the home, our vehicles.
Mm-hmm.
Because if we do have to leave our home, your vehicle is most likely the way you're going to do it. You're probably not going, if you've got an instance where you're having to leave your home, more than likely you're not going to be doing it on foot. And there are instances where that may happen, but this is the time to check any and all of your vehicles to make sure that, and whether you do it or whether you have a qualified mechanic do it, to really go over the vehicle and make sure that there is nothing that, within reason, that can go wrong with the vehicle within the next 6 months, maybe. And that's, I think, probably the most reasonable amount of time to expect an inspection to be good. Yeah. But to really go over the vehicle with a fine-tooth comb, make sure all the axles are greased, that all the lines are working, that I know Jen, my girlfriend, the other day was going down the street and we had just had work done on her car. I don't know how they missed this, but the timing belt snapped and ended up taking out the entire cooling system of her car. And so those are really not things you want to have happen while you're in a situation where you need to bug out.
Or even simple things. Aaron mentioned all the big things, and those are all really big things. But even something simple like making sure your windshield wipers are to spec and actually functioning still. If it's been a long winter, or maybe you've had a dry winter, the cold weather with the heat that's coming now can crack them. The rubber can get brittle. And if they're not performing, replace them. And don't forget to continue working on your survival chi plan. You've now gone through an inventory list. You've gone through, we talked about food and water, making sure all your needs are met. So go take a look at your survival chi list and make sure that's up to date also. We recently went through that New Year's survival chi plan. Well, we're now a quarter into the year. Now's a great time to take a look at it, review it, and see how you feel about where you are with it.
And if you're new to the show and have no idea what we're talking about, and we will put a link to what survival chi is in the show today. And we've gotten a lot of requests lately for different things that we've talked about that have it in a bulleted list. There is coming, I can't say exactly when, because both Jonathan and I have a tremendous amount going on and trying to get the show out every week and do the best job that we possibly can with it. But we're coming out with a list of basically from the 3-week bug in show, bug out bag, the different bag lists that we've talked about throughout the last year and a half that we've been on the air, and as well as just general tips and stuff. And that's going to be coming out soon, as well as an actual written thing about what survival chi is. But in the meantime, for those newer to the show, we'll put links in the show notes today directing you back to the Survival Cheese Show. That is definitely one of the first shows that you should listen when coming on board the rabbit hole. And with that, we wrap up episode 64. Thank you for joining us. This has been an episode from the In the Rabbit Hole Urban Survival Podcast. You can learn more by visiting intherabbithole.com. Be sure to like this video and subscribe to our YouTube channel for more great survival stuff.